An island can become dangerous in many ways. Sometimes it is a storm. Sometimes it is fire under the ground. And sometimes the danger stays long after the flash is gone. Niuafo'ou in Tonga is described in the research behind this video as the most toxic island on Earth. Around 3,000 people still live there. They live with the long shadow of radioactive contamination linked to French nuclear testing in the South Pacific. The air looks normal. The sea still meets the shore the same way it always has. People still fish. People still work. People still stay. By the end of this video, you'll know why this works and how to apply it with what you already have. That line does not fit this story. And that is the point. There is no easy fix here. No simple repair. No clean ending. The real question is harder. Why do people remain in a place that many outsiders would call unlivable? The research points to a long chain of events that began in 1966, when France started nuclear testing in the French Polynesia region. Those tests continued until 1996. Historical records cited in the research say there were more than 193 nuclear tests in the South Pacific, including atmospheric and underground detonations, with a total explosive yield above 1.5 megatons. Niuafo'ou is presented in the research as one of the islands affected by that testing. The danger here is not one single blast or one single day. It is contamination that can remain in land, water, and living systems long after the testing ends. The research says residents are exposed to radioactive materials and that this raised local cancer risk, even though specific cancer statistics for Niuafo'ou are not widely available or may be out of date. That gap matters. It shows one of the hardest parts of this story. People can feel that something is wrong without getting clear numbers that settle the argument once and for all. By 1975, fallout from the tests had already begun to raise health concerns among people on Niuafo'ou and nearby islands, according to the timeline in the research. In 1996, France ended nuclear testing in the Pacific region. But ending tests is not the same as ending the damage. A report released in 2009 highlighted continued environmental impacts and health risks from the tests. The problem did not stay in the past. It carried forward into the 2010s, the 2020s, and into current debates about health, justice, and responsibility. The most common outside view is simple. If a place is contaminated, people should leave. That sounds rational from a distance. It also misses almost everything that makes a place home. The research gives a very different picture of daily life. Niuafo'ou faces economic pressure and relies mainly on fishing and agriculture. Those are not side details. They are the center of the story. If your work, your skills, your family ties, and your land are all on one island, leaving is not just a change of address. It can mean giving up the only life you know how to sustain. Starting over somewhere else is often described as a choice. For many island families, it is closer to a gamble. There is also a cultural reason that keeps people in place. Many residents have ancestral ties to the island. That phrase can sound abstract until you slow down and think about what it means. Family history is tied to the ground itself. Memory is tied to the shore, the paths, the homes, the graves, the fishing areas, the habits built across generations. Leaving does not only move a person away from risk, it can also cut that person away from identity. This is where the story stops being only about contamination and starts becoming about human endurance. People do not measure risk in the same way when the alternative is losing their place in the world. The research also shows a deep divide over what the contamination means in real life. Some residents believe the land is safe despite the contamination. Others report severe health issues. That disagreement is one of the most striking parts of the story. Mainstream scientific concern, as described in the research, says radioactive exposure increased health risk and that contamination issues continue. Yet local belief does not always follow official warnings. That is not rare in places shaped by long hardship. When people have lived somewhere for years, and when leaving feels impossible, belief itself can become part of survival. There is another side to that divide. The research says the French government has historically downplayed the impact of its nuclear tests. That has fueled frustration among residents and advocates. If official voices minimize harm for years, trust breaks down. People may reject warnings because the institutions behind those warnings no longer feel honest. Others may push harder for recognition because they believe the damage was denied for too long. That fight for recognition has lasted decades. Claims for damages against the French government have been made, and many remain unresolved, according to the research. By 2019, France had allocated around $700 million as compensation for nuclear test-related damages across Pacific Islands. Even that figure does not close the issue. Money spread across many islands, many families, and many years does not erase exposure, fear, illness, or the sense that justice arrived late and incomplete. The governments and groups involved show how wide this issue has become. The French government is tied to the tests themselves. The government of French Polynesia has documented health impacts and pushed for reparations. The Tonga government manages health and safety efforts for residents on affected islands. An advocacy group named Testimonio contra la Radiación is also seeking justice for victims of nuclear testing in the region. Each of these names points to the same truth. This is not only an island story. It is a political story, a medical story, and a moral story. A report in 2009 kept the issue in public view. Public health awareness and advocacy grew from 2015 to 2020, according to the research, with calls for better living conditions for affected populations, including people on Niuafo'ou. In 2021, debates continued over reparations and health monitoring. The research says recent studies indicate ongoing contamination issues, but health monitoring has been sporadic and underfunded. That detail matters as much as any headline. A place can carry long-term risk, while the system meant to track that risk stays weak. As of 2023, health assessments and community programs were still trying to address the legacy of the tests. The word legacy can sound soft. It is not soft here. It means people are still living inside the after effects. And still, around 3,000 residents remain. That number is the center of the paradox. Not 3,000 victims in the past. 3,000 residents in the present. People making meals, repairing nets, working land, caring for family, arguing with neighbors, making ordinary choices inside an abnormal setting. This also challenges a common belief about dangerous places. Outsiders often assume people stay because they do not understand the risk. The research gives a more difficult answer. Some stay despite believing there is danger. Some stay because they believe the danger is overstated. Some stay because they cannot afford a new life elsewhere. Some stay because leaving would break a bond to ancestral land that they do not think money can replace. These are not the same reason, but they all lead to the same result. Niuafo'ou is not just a contaminated island in the South Pacific. It is a place where the idea of home has outlasted fear, anger, and uncertainty. It is a place where history did not end when the testing stopped in 1996. It stayed in the soil, in the politics, in the health debates, and in the decisions families still make. There is no neat lesson here. The science points to contamination and health risk. The politics point to disputed responsibility and unresolved compensation. The human story points somewhere even harder to measure. People will accept more risk than outsiders expect when the cost of leaving is not only financial, but personal, cultural, and permanent. So the question this island leaves us with is not only how dangerous a place can become, it is how much danger a person will live with rather than abandon the ground that made them who they are. If home itself has been poisoned, what would you do? Stay and live with the risk, or leave and lose the place that taught you your name.